Thanks to the UAW, average hourly earnings in the transportation equipment manufacturing sector rose 4% in December alone, the largest monthly increase since 1996.
The first thing that we're going to get to today is last week in Southern labor, and it is actually, more accurately, the last 3 weeks in Southern labor, because we were last on the radio on December 15th or 16th. Since then, we've been pre-taped best of episodes. So we've got a lot to catch up on, a lot. It's like a couple of thousand of words. It's crazy. Missed a lot of stuff while we were gone, so we're going to try to go roll through it really quick. And without further ado, here is what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to in the weeks from 15 December to 5 January. We had several new campaigns. 10 remote animation workers at Disney in 6 states, including Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia, filed for a union election with IATSE's Animation Guild, Local 839. 51 workers at CQ Roll Call in Washington, D.C. filed for a union election with the News Guild CWA after the employer rejected their request for a voluntary recognition. 100 workers at Monongolia Emergency Medical Services in Morgantown, West Virginia, filed for a union election with the International Association of EMTs and Paramedics, IAEP, which is a division of the National Association of Government Employees, NAGE, which is affiliated with SEIU. I'm not going to spell out that acronym. I'll let you figure it out. Workers likely intimidated or pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify Workers United as the union representing 12 workers at Adventist Corporation in Petersburg, Virginia. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 21 security officers at Meow Wolf Dallas in Grapevine, Texas, showed support for unionization with, I'm not sure, the filing does not say. Meanwhile, the employer also filed for another union election after a majority of the 71 other workers at Meow Wolf Dallas showed support for unionization with the Communication Workers of America. Meow Wolf is an artist collective. 9 workers at the Peace Center Foundation in Greenville, South Carolina, filed for a union election with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, IATSE Local 322. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union, RWDSU, as the union representing the 62 workers at Nestle in McDonough, Georgia. I say RWDSU is the union, although the NLRB filing again doesn't mention the union, because I found a press release about the RWDSU winning an election there in 2017. 6 workers at Public Television 19 in Kansas City, Missouri, filed for a union election with the National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians, NABET-CWA. 24 workers at Platinum Waste Disposal in Ganaibo, Puerto Rico, filed for a union election, but the NLRB case page does not say which union. This has been an unusually common occurrence in this roundup, as you will continue to see. 24 skilled maintenance workers at Duke University in Raleigh, North Carolina, filed for a union election with the International Union of Operating Engineers, IUOE, Local 465. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Locals 714 and 1493, as the union representing the 15 workers at GTA RATP Dev in Greensboro, North Carolina. 5 workers at CBD Kratom in St. Louis, Missouri, filed for a union election, as did 4 workers at another location in the same city, but again, the NLRB case page does not say who. Maybe the Teamsters Local 955. I say that because they just won the second dispensary union election in Missouri in August. So it's not a bad guess. The other guess would be UFCW. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 26 workers at Neil R. Gross and Company in Washington, D.C. showed support for a unionization with Court Reporters United. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 20 workers at Starbucks in St. Anne, Missouri showed support for a unionization with Starbucks Workers United. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify the Transport Workers United, TWU, Local 530 2013 as the union representing the 21 workers at Menzies Aviation in Dallas, Texas. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 24 workers at Ballet Austin in Austin, Texas, showed support for a unionization with the American Guild of Musical Artists, a missed opportunity to recreate the Simpsons union. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 54 workers at Stratus Systems in Dallas, Texas, showed support for unionization with presumably the sheet metal, air, and rail transportation workers, SMART. I say presumably because, again, the NLRB case page does not show a union, but I did find a recent board charge filed by SMART against the same employer in the same town. 85 workers at Southern Electric Corporation in Miami, Florida filed for a union election, but it doesn't say who with. 9 workers at Wiener King of Cumberland County, doing business as Wiener Works in Fayetteville, North Carolina, filed for a union election with the National Labor Union. The employer filed for a union election after a majority of the 20 workers at Starbucks in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, showed support for unionization with the Starbucks Workers United. 24 workers at Keystone Supply Company in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, filed for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 886. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify Starbucks Workers United as the union representing 14 workers at a Starbucks in Jacksonville, Florida. 29 workers at the Disability Law Center of Virginia in Richmond, Virginia, filed for a union election, but it doesn't say who with. Workers likely pushed by their employer filed a petition to decertify CWA Local 3808 as the union representing the 124 workers at AT&T Mobility Tennessee IHX in Gallatin, Tennessee. 12 workers at Wolf Creek Federal Services, pipe fitters and sheet metal workers in Huntsville, Alabama, filed for a union election with the United Association of Plumbers and Steam Fitters, UA Local 760, and 16 other workers at Wolf Creek Federal Services, electricians and carpenters in Huntsville, Alabama, filed for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 558.
Both of the unions with nice big halls in the city.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
the
really
only
cool.
unions with no. There is also the laborers have a hall. The laborers have a hall. It's not as big, but yeah, very cool. 4 workers at Lee County Electrical Cooperative in North Fort Myers, Florida, filed for a union election to add them to the bargaining unit already represented by IBEW Local 1933. We had a couple of campaign updates on the UAW organizing campaign that happened over the break. The UAW's Sean Fain and Volkswagen workers, Volkswagen worker organizers, visited the Chattanooga Volkswagen plant with a faith and community coalition to demand they end their union busting. And 33 U.S. senators issued a letter to non-union auto companies calling on them to cease union busting activities. Absent from the list were both of Alabama's senators, despite the fact that there are multiple non-union auto companies that are being targeted by the UAW's organizing campaign in their state. Had several election results. Again, going to start off with some of the bad news. 11 groups of workers withdrew their petition for a union election. 3 workers, there were 4 groups of workers at UPS in Louisville, Kentucky. All withdrew their petition to unionize with the Teamsters Local 89, and another group of UPS workers in Campbellsville, Kentucky also withdrew their petition to unionize with Teamsters Local 89. I am hopeful, because this is UPS, and I think that presumably there's some sort of neutrality agreement that they have in their National Master Agreement. I'm hopeful that those petitions for election were withdrawn because they got voluntary recognition, but I don't know. We'll see. 33 workers at High Profile Dispensary in Columbia, Missouri withdrew their petition for a union election with UFCW Local 655, as did 4 workers at Red Label in Stillwater, Oklahoma with UFCW Local 1000. 290 workers at Places for People Incorporated in St. Louis, Missouri with SEIU. 15 security guards at Walden Security in Washington, D.C. with the United States Court Security Officers. And 10 workers at Waxwork Recording Company in Harahan, Louisiana. And finally, the last group of workers that withdrew their petition for a union election election, 25 workers at Advan 6 in Hopewell, Virginia, with UFCW Local 591C. In brighter news, the petition to decertify Teamsters Local 89 as the union representing 36 workers at Taylor Correc in Campbellsville, Kentucky, was also withdrawn, meaning that the Teamsters Local 89 stays. Workers at Alliance Mobile, an AT&T subsidiary meant to get away from the union in Kingsport, Tennessee, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the CWA. 242 workers at Costco in Norfolk, Virginia, voted 111 to 92 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 822. After the victory, Costco sent out a letter to all employees in the United States saying that the company was, quote, disappointed by the result, unquote. Puzzlingly, this was called classy by a large progressive Twitter account.
That's
bonkers.
What some people would call it. I wouldn't call it that myself.
33 workers at Coca-Cola in Beckley, West Virginia voted 23 to 10 in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 175. 53 workers at Kenergy Corporation in Henderson, Kentucky voted 27 to 26, narrowly scraped by there in favor of unionization with the IBEW Local 1701. 15 workers at Koppers in Newsoms, Virginia voted 5 to 9 to decertify United Steelworkers Local 14187-01. 2 workers at Technica in Fort Bliss, Texas, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with IUOE Local 351. 3 workers at Transdev Services in Auburn, Alabama, voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 612. 23 workers at Starbucks in Durham, North Carolina, voted in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United. 2 workers at CBRE in Washington, D.C., voted unanimously in favor of unionization with IUOE Local 99. 28 workers at C3 Industries in Columbia, Missouri voted unanimously in favor of unionization with UFCW Local 655. 22 workers at Night Owl's Print Shop in Houston, Texas voted 15 to 5 in favor of unionization with Night Owls United. 5 workers at Alliance Mobile in Morristown, Tennessee voted unanimously in favor of unionization with CWA. 11 workers at Conversion Geeks in Chesterfield, Virginia voted unanimously in favor of unionization with the Animation Guild, IATSE, Local 839. 4 workers at CBRE in Dallas, Texas voted in favor of unionization with IUOE Local 68. 20 workers at Starbucks in Durham, North Carolina voted in favor of unionization with Starbucks Workers United. 6 workers at Lincare Holdings in Wheeling, West Virginia voted in favor of unionization with Teamsters Local 697. Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate. 8 workers at Johnson Controls Fire Protection in Springfield, Missouri voted 3 to 5 against unionization with the UA's Road Sprinkler Fitters Local 669. 598 workers, probably the biggest election in this latest roundup, at University Medical Center, New Orleans, in New Orleans, Louisiana, voted 442 to 100 in favor of unionization with National Nurses United. 52 workers at Quest Diagnostics Clinical Laboratories in Abbeville, Georgia, voted 29 to 17 in favor of unionization with Teamsters Local 728. 17 workers at the Oklahoma Policy Institute, a sister organization to Alabama Arise, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, voted unanimously in favor of unionization with UFCW Local 1000. And finally, 9 workers at Rogers Group in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, voted 4 to 5 against unionization with IUOE. We had a few settlements, grievances, and unfair labor practices last week. A new ProPublica report alleges widespread abuse of workers on the railroads. From the report, quote, the companies blame workers when they get hurt and motivate supervisors to go to extreme and sometimes dangerous lengths to keep injuries off the books, unquote. This including paying workers to hide head injuries and having doctors alter records so the company will not have to report the injury. Insane stuff. Universal Orlando agreed to scrap company policies that would have prohibited the wearing of pro-union buttons after a worker filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board and won. friend of the show, McKenna Schuler, broke the story for the Orlando Weekly. This is a big one. AFGE secured the reinstatement with back pay and accumulated leave benefits for an employee after a series of discrimination and wrongful termination complaints stemming back to 2017 in Fort Gordon, Georgia. The employee received over $300,000 in back pay, interest, and compensatory damages. That's a huge news. Teamsters at DHL in Kentucky ended their 12-day strike in December after coming to a tentative agreement containing enhanced workplace safety, higher wages, and better benefits. The TA is with the workers for a vote now. The NLRB is alleging that the NCAA abuses the term student athlete to deprive college players of workplace protections. A recent poll showed 62% of college athletes think that they should form a union. So that's pretty cool. Elon Musk and SpaceX are trying to have the NLRB abolished after it found the company illegally fired workers for their criticisms. We're going to dive into that a little bit more in the second half of the show. Truckers Movement for Justice is alleging the illegal firings of 18 pro-unionization truck drivers in Texas by employer Lohi Logistics. Several strikes and bargaining updates last week. A coalition of labor groups and allies, including SEIU Local 7 and the Missouri Workers Center, are planning to pack the Jackson County Courthouse to oppose efforts to give the Kansas City Royals taxpayer subsidies for a new stadium without a strong community benefits agreement. Rather than bargaining with its workers, Amazon encouraged its employees over the Christmas break to write a letter to Pecky, the company mascot, named that because Amazon says they are, quote, peculiar, detailing their hardships for the chance that the company might help them in their time of need over the holidays. Amazon workers start at only $17 an hour. Meanwhile, the company in the last quarter tripled its profits to $9.9 billion. Southwest airline pilots won a tentative agreement with a 50% raise over the next 5 years. Members are currently voting on whether or not to accept the deal. 26,000 flight attendants at American Airlines voted by 99% to authorize a strike. They haven't received a raise since 2019. Flight attendants at Southwest, United, and Alaska Airlines are also in contract negotiations. Crew members at Atlanta's Alliance Theater, who recently unionized with IATSE Local 798, won their first collective bargaining agreement that includes immediate raises of between 22% and 8%, depending on classification, more overtime, more time off, and better insurance benefits. Teamsters at Anheuser-Busch voted to authorize a strike by 99%. Salisbury, North Carolina firefighters with the International Association of Firefighters Local 2370 are pushing for step raises for municipal employees. In internal union affairs, there was only one story, but whoo boy, it was a lot. So there was lots of drama in minor league football labor over the time that we were off. So the United Football Players Association, UFPA, and keep that acronym in your mind, put out a statement saying that their, quote, partnership with the United Steelworkers has ended, unquote, which led me to believe that the union that won an election to unionize the United States Football League players and lost an election to unionize XFL players would be disaffiliating from the United Steelworkers. However, and they said that they were ending their partnership, the UFPA, ending their partnership with the United Steelworkers because during the merger between XFL and USFL, they are saying that this is going to result in a 50% cut in players and no raise for those that are remaining. And that this happened because the United Steelworkers, quote, stood by and allowed this to happen while, quote, shutting out the UFPA from negotiations. So that sounds pretty bad. However, after this, a new Twitter account appeared calling itself the United States Football League Players Association, USFLPA, USW Local 9000, put out their own statement saying that the UFPA, in fact, was never the bargaining representative of the players and that they were their own non-union, non-profit organization that had been hired to work as organizers for the United Steelworkers organizing campaign, and affirmed that their relationship had been terminated. That statement, however, did not address allegations of ineffectiveness, but did say that the XFL players, because of the merger, would automatically be brought into the bargaining unit. And in the final response in this back and forth, the United Football Players Association released a video affirming the correctness of the USFLPA's statement, saying that it was a mistake to enlist the USW as their union instead of going independent, and that they're trying to run another election to take over the union in 2024. Did you get all that? Was all that super clear?
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy. That's bonkers. Several policy, politics, and legislative updates. Elon Musk and SpaceX are seeking to have the NLRB declared illegal after the Labor Board accused the company of illegally firing 8 workers for criticizing the company. So much for free speech. A recently released annual report from the Federal Office of Personnel Management showed that telework can be a strong incentive for employee retention amid serious staff shortages across the government. Completely unrelated to the staff shortages many federal agencies are facing, the pay gap between federal workers and similar private sector workers increased again in 2023 to 27%. UE Local 150, representing state and municipal workers in North Carolina, has called for Duke University to start paying taxes to the city of Durham to help fund raises for city workers. Labor reporter for the Huffington Post has a great piece reminding folks about Trump's record on labor, which includes, but is certainly not limited to, making it easier for bosses to steal from and physically injure their workers, freezing pay for agricultural immigrant workers, and increasing line speeds in poultry plants. Greyhound is floundering nationwide, prompting calls for its nationalization. Minimum wage workers in 22 states got a raise at the beginning of January, but only one of those states were in the Republican-controlled South, and that's using a liberal notion of the South. It's Missouri. Minimum wage workers in Alabama make $7.25 an hour. Tipped workers can and do make as little as $2.13 an hour. A new lawsuit, quote, alleges that current and former officers and board members of Next Era Energy Incorporated, the parent company of Florida Power and Light, violated federal securities laws by making materially false and misleading statements related to the company's political spending, per AL.com. These officers and board members utilized Alabama's infamous consulting firm Matrix to carry out some of this work. United Steelworkers President David McCall says the U.S. Steel buyout by Nippon violates their collective bargaining agreement and would be bad for America. A bipartisan group of Congress members wrote a letter to the Biden administration urging review of the proposed buyout. Biden has responded by saying the purchase deserves, quote, serious scrutiny, unquote. Fairfield Tubular Operations and Fairfield Works in Birmingham are subsidiaries of U.S. Steel, which is also a major landholder in Jefferson County involved in multiple development projects. Regulations implementing Biden's executive order to mandate project labor agreements on all federal projects exceeding $35 million were finally announced. It is estimated that 200,000 workers will gain collectively bargained wages and protections as a result. Cecil Roberts, president of the United Mine Workers of America, eviscerated U.S. Representative Scott Perry for his amendment that would prohibit, quote, the use of funds for MSHA to finalize, implement, or enforce the proposed rule entitled Lowering Miners' Exposure to Respirable Crystalline Silica and Improving Respiratory Protection, saying that he and others like him are in the dark about critical needs of tens of thousands of their own constituents. The U.S. Postal Service, as part of Trump appointee Louis DeJoy's wide-ranging 10-year plan to change the Postal Service, which includes recent postage cost increase, by the way, announced a proposal to move a Knoxville, Kentucky distribution center operations to Louisville, Kentucky. Postal workers are speaking out against the proposal. New data showed that more workers died on the job in 2022 than the year before, and House Republicans are seeking to cut funding to both OSHA and MSHA. We had 2 miscellaneous updates, and then we are done with the big roundup last week in Southern labor. Work has begun on a $1 billion graphic packaging international paper mill in Waco, Texas, that will reportedly employ 200 people. It is unclear and probably unlikely that these workers will immediately be represented by a union, and I can't find anything about GPI having a national master agreement with any union. 500 United Steelworkers, United Steelworkers members, GPI workers down the road in Domino, Texas, recently ratified a 5-year contract back in March after narrowly avoiding a strike, and 200 GPI workers in Chicago, Illinois, just unionized with the Teamsters. And finally, thanks to the new UAW contract, per Bloomberg, average hourly earnings for production and non-supervisory workers in the transportation equipment manufacturing sector rose 4% in December alone, the largest monthly increase since 1996, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Nice.
Woo! There we go.
Good job. Yeah, that was quite a few updates.
Quite a few updates. Yeah, that's what we get for taking so much time off.
Yeah, it was surprisingly busy over the Christmas break.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, there was, filings popping up right around the holidays. Was glad to see some IATSE wins in there. I was glad to see the National Nurses United win at New Orleans. That's huge.
Yeah.
That is probably the biggest one, like you said, of all of them. And
probably one of the biggest election wins in the South in 2023 in the whole year.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say so. It's definitely up there. And so that's really important. I think that's a game changer. Would love to see NNU spread throughout the South.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.